welcome to my channel, and welcome back to the I Am Ironman series for part 2. So before we begin, I just wanted to say that I know that some of this work was done off screen. I did record myself putting primer on the entire helmet and putting the Bondo on the faceplate. However, for some reason, a lot of my footage got corrupted lately. So a lot of footage of this project, my Ant-Man helmet, and some of the Mandalorian helmet, if you watch that video, I said that I lost a lot of footage, and I lost probably about 3 hours worth, and a lot of it was from this project. So as you can see, I put Bondo on some of the faceplate and started to work on it. As you can see, I even began sanding it, and I also put primer, one coat of primer over the entire helmet. So in today's video, I'm not going to be showing you guys how to apply primer, as it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just spraying on the can onto the print. I'm going to actually be showing you guys how to put Bondo and how to fill in the deeper crevices of a 3D print that is left from the supports. So on this part of the dome of the helmet, there's really bad layer lines that even the sanding couldn't get rid of because they're so deep from the supports. On the sides of the helmet, there's also a lot of layer lines that you can't usually get from sanding, and this is how you get rid of those and how to make the edges of the print smoother without losing any detail. I'm also going to be showing you guys how to apply Bondo and other type of fillers to areas where there's a lot of detail and lines that you don't want to lose. So I'm going to be showing you guys some of the tools that you will definitely need while using the Bondo glazing and spotting putty or any type of filler, and some that are optional. So this is a hyper tough respirator that I got from Walmart, I think, and it was about $7 for a 3-pack. Definitely wear this, as the smell from the glazing putty can be pretty strong and can get you lightheaded if you're in a not a well ventilated area. So try to do this outside. If not, use a respirator. It's not going to hurt you if you don't, but the scent of it is really strong, and this will just help prevent any sort of dizziness or getting lightheaded or anything like that. When you do sand it, however, you're definitely going to need a respirator no matter what, but we'll get into that later. So while you don't need something this big or even made of metal, it does help to have some sort of applicator to spread the Bondo over the print. They make plastic and rubber ones that kind of morph to the shape of the print and help to put it into the crevices that needs to be in. So some sort of applicator like this definitely helps as well. I'm not going to be actually using this tool or the next tool that I show you, just because I have a specific way that I like to apply it, and that's how I'm going to be doing it. But another tool that you can use are these clay forming tools. People use these for cutting clay and kind of putting a design in them before they start to heat them and make it like a permanent shape. So you can actually use this stuff to get in smaller detail areas and just put the Bondo on the end of it and rub it in. In today's video, the method that I'm going to be using is just putting it on my fingers on the gloves and rubbing it in. If you do go with the method of using your finger to apply this, make sure that you wear gloves and a respirator, because you don't want this stuff to get on your fingers. It's pretty bad for your skin. I've done it before, and it definitely takes a while to get off, and it's not recommended to have on your skin at all. Read the directions, do research if you have to, but don't want to have this stuff in your lungs or on your skin at all. Okay, and to begin, I'm going to be working on the top part of the helmet where the supports were actually sitting when I printed it. It was a pretty bad round indentation just from the supports, and I'm going to be filling it in with this Bondo glazing and spot putty. If you want to, try to move it around inside of the tube and or put it in some warm water. It'll kind of loosen up the product and make it easier to apply on the helmet. So all I'm going to be doing is putting a little bit of it on the end of my fingertip, and then just kind of pick an area that you want to start in evenly spread it off of your finger onto the print, and then just kind of rub it in. And then as you're going along and starting to rub it into the print, you don't have to go back and forth. You can just hit it one time if you need to. This is just the way that I do it. And you'll notice that it'll start taking the indents and imperfections out of the print. It'll start to fill in all the holes and make the print smooth. As you can tell though, some lines do start to bleed through, even through the Bondo. So it's just part of the process. You're gonna have to put on some Bondo and then some primer and then sand it and then repeat. And then you're just gonna wanna keep going along the helmet, finding any imperfections or basically dents that were left over from your supports or some type of failure in the print, or maybe you dropped it. This is easy ways to fix cracked prints as well. You can rub this stuff into lines or any sort of mishap that happened with the model, and it'll take away the imperfections. If you wanted to, and I've definitely seen many people do this, you can actually cover the entire helmet red with this stuff. All it's going to do is keep covering the imperfections and make it smoother and smoother. I do that sometimes. In this one I might not, just because it's so big you'll use a lot of product if you do that. That's the important part of the sanding. And the first coat of primer that you put on, you want to try to make sure that you put in as much time and effort as you can with that sanding at the beginning. That way you don't have to use as much Bondo and primer going through the rest of the project. So as you're going through, especially if you're using gloves like I am, you'll notice that this stuff dries almost instantly. 30 to 45 minutes and this stuff is almost ready to be sanded off actually. So what you're going to want to do is just use a different finger and just keep going. It's a little wasteful on the gloves, but this way is just better for me to do. Sometimes if you use applicators, it'll dry onto the applicator and then you'll have to wash that off and then get that ready and then dry it. And this is just quicker for me to do it this way. So as you can see, as I'm starting to finish up the side here, all of the dark red spots that you see on the helmet is the parts of the Bondo that isn't dry, and all of that light red is basically dry. Like I said, if you give this stuff like 30 to 45 minutes, it'll actually be ready to go ahead and start sanding. And as you can see, when I set it on the bench, none of it was left on the actual table, so it's going to be dry in about 30 to 45 minutes completely and be ready for sanding. On the detail areas, like inside where the helmet sits on the faceplate and the jaw piece, just go ahead and rub it onto there. That helps a lot because the sanding process can sometimes dull the details. So instead of rubbing really hard with heavy grit sandpapers on the sides where it's going to open and close or whatever, just put this stuff in there and then wet sand it, and it'll keep all of the details while not deforming the helmet at all. Once you get done using it on any applicator that you have, you can just rub the excess off onto the helmet and let it wait to dry. So real quick, an alternative to the Bondo glazing and spot putty, there's also just the regular Bondo filler. So these large tubs of the Bondo body filler are cheaper than buying the individual tubes of the glazing and spot putty. It's the same sort of product. The only difference is you have to mix this one yourself. It'll come with a hardener as well as the product of the actual filler itself. You mix it around with a popsicle stick and apply it the same way as the glazing and spot putty, except it'll give you a lot more and you have to mix it yourself. So you have to read the directions, make sure that you put the right amount of hardener in with the filler. And if you want to save money and you're going to use a lot more of it, just go ahead and buy these tubs and apply it yourself. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to apply the glazing putty where there's spots where there's more detail on the helmet. As you can see on this jaw and chin piece, there's a lot more lines and smaller details that I don't want to lose from the glazing and spot putty, as it can be pretty thick and sometimes hide these details. So I'm just going to show you guys the way I do it. Same sort of way, just applying it all over except being a little bit more careful. I'm going to start with a small amount of product on my fingertip and just kind of ride the lines of the details, trying to hit a certain amount of area at a time. As you can see, I'm doing this little triangular portion with this line right here. And if you're careful enough, you should be able to not hit the lines. It's pretty sturdy. It's weird, when you apply it, it's not like a liquid, it's more of a paste. So as soon as you apply it, it sticks. It's not gonna run, so as long as you're careful, you can actually get pretty accurate with where you're putting this stuff. So as you can see, once you apply it, it dries almost instantly. A couple of seconds and the top of the surface is already drying. And I just wanted to show you guys, if you start getting a dry spot on your finger or applicator, or even just using a fresh one, and you start to rub a dry spot too much, it'll actually start to rip the product off of the print. So once you apply this stuff, you kind of just want to trust it and leave it. Even if it's not perfectly smooth onto the print, worry about it when you're sanding it off. It'll be a lot easier and it'll save you more product and time than trying to make every square inch of this thing perfect. It's part of the prep. And once you put this stuff on, just sort of trust that it's gonna help fill in the holes and worry about making it smoother when you start sanding it again. So the really nice thing about this stuff is it is not going to completely get rid of details. As you can see, I went over this line with it and you can very clearly still see it. If you have a dull knife or a semi-sharp object, even something like a toothpick or certain files that you can get from Harbor Freight, you can easily repair all of these details on the helmet. Once you've let the glazing and spot putty sit for about an hour, it should have dried all the way through to the print and be ready for sanding. This stuff gets very dusty, so you're going to be wanting to wear gloves and a respirator for sure. Preferably be outside to do this. And the sanding sponge I'm going to be using is a 220 grit. You're going to want to use something between a 180 and a 220, just because if you use anything too aggressive, you'll start to actually chunk up or chip the Bondo off of the print, or even take it out of the crevices and cracks that you're trying to fill to begin with. So something less coarse like a 180 to 220 is a good medium to start while sanding off the Bondo, and it does get very dusty very fast. So I just wanted to show you guys a light sanding can lead to a lot of dust very quickly. So definitely do this stuff outside, wear a respirator and wear gloves. It just comes off very easily, which is very nice to get it smooth. And as you can see just how much dust actually comes off of that little bit of sanding that I did. As you can imagine, if you did an entire helmet and started to sand the entire thing indoors without a respirator, it'll get everywhere, and you don't want this stuff to get in your lungs or on your skin or anything. So just be careful with this stuff and always take any precautions. So that is going to be it for today's episode. I hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. I've decided to make this I Am Ironman series never ending. I think I'm just going to keep making more episodes, posting it every 2 weeks just to show you guys the progress that I'm making on this helmet. I don't want to rush this one. I want to make this a really nice helmet, possibly a whole suit one day. I don't know. That's why I want to make this series never ending. In the next episode, I plan on putting on the final coat of primer over the Bondo and begin wet sanding it. And then after that, it should be ready for paint, and then so on and so forth, electronics, lights. I'm going to be doing everything on this thing. So once again, I hope you guys like the idea of this series being an ongoing series that I post every 2 weeks, and not excluding any other video that I plan on posting in that week, and just making this an ongoing project with no ending timeline. Once again, thank you guys for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.